Today I would like to talk about SEMA 2022 and modified car culture in general. I think that in the past few years there's kind of been a drought of modified cars as a result of COVID and other external factors regarding the economy and supply chains. But this year I feel like even though we're not in the best economic situation right now and supply chains are still pretty backed up, I think that all the projects and innovation that was happening during COVID, after the lockdown was removed, it was like a dam opened and everything just kind of flooded out. And I think these shows in the last few months, especially SEMA, Lufting Cult, and other shows like that, like big shows where a lot of people go and a lot of new ideas and builds are brought to the forefront. I think there's an influx of cars that we haven't seen in a very long time, I feel like, and an influx of new ideas as well. And I think that all the car shows that survived the past 2 years, I think, have come back stronger. And all the shops and builders that have weathered the storm of COVID and the difficult past few years have come back stronger as well. Like, for example, if you look at the Ring Brothers, which is a shop from Wisconsin that works mostly on older muscle cars and such, they debuted 4 or 5 cars this past week at SEMA, all of which are built to an extremely high level. And I think that, in a normal year, they would have brought 1 or 2. But this year, they bought 4 ground up, thousands upon thousands of man-hour builds and debuted them. And I feel like it was just it stopped the show almost. And, I mean, if you look at I forget what the truck's called, but it's also or something. It's a old Chevy pickup truck, but they've completely redone the chassis. It's got a roadster shop chassis. It's got some crazy racing V8, and everything is custom made. Custom carbon fiber, custom metalwork, everywhere. And it's got a lot of really cool kind of IndyCar inspiration. Like in the suspension, it's got air jacks. It looks basically like a truck on an F1 chassis. And I think that sort of innovation and fresh thinking is really beneficial to the industry. And I think that truck we're going to look back on in 10 years and be like, okay, that marks a turning point. And another build that they debuted, the Bully, it was a Chevy K10 Blazer, is another kind of similar example of that. It's not quite as extreme, but it pushes the vintage off-road section of resto mods and pro touring cars to the same sort of level that I feel like muscle cars and older Chevys and Fords, like 30s types of cars, have been on. And I think that the amount of custom fabrication work and just new and fresh thinking that was brought forth with that is pretty impressive. And other companies like Greening Automotive and Roadster Shop, I think, have really kind of embraced the 80s aesthetic, and that's pretty cool to see because I think that the future of the muscle car restoration, resto mod community, I think, lies in those 80s Buick Grand Nationals, Camaros, Fox Body Mustangs. And if you're able to build one of those to a high level, I think that'll be able to separate you from a lot of the other companies. And there's room for a lot of new ideas and new thinking. But, however, it's not just muscle cars that are kind of getting their time in the spotlight. There was a GTR, full carbon, bare carbon, and it was painted midnight purple that came out by a company from Japan called Garage Active. And I think Garage Active, even though they're very different from the Ring Brothers in what they do, the Ring Brothers are more focused on mostly show cars. That's what they got started on. Garage Active, they started as more of, I think, a drag racing company and branched out to more of these show cars. But I think that Garage Active is similar to Ring Brothers in the fact that they're bringing this level of workmanship to the forefront. And workmanship in cars that you wouldn't necessarily think of as something that can be built to a high, almost Riddler level. Like, 2 years in a row, they've had almost $1 million or more than $1 million R32 GTRs at SEMA, and they've been able to display the workmanship and carbon fiber and all that in these cars. And even though it's a little bit off the beaten path for a lot of Japanese cars to build something to this level, there's not usually this sort of level of crazy quality in a lot of GTR builds, but it's cool to see that someone is pushing the boundaries in that category of cars. Another car that indicates where the industry is moving is the 4Rotor being built by Rob Dahm, and I've been following along with the build on this car for years, and I think it's the embodiment of kind of how far you can push the internal combustion platform, and I think it's cool what he's doing with the rotary, which is not the most popular engine, and it's very, very temperamental, and it's hard to get it right. But the technology he's infused into this car is admirable, and I think it's cool that he kind of built this level of a car and documented it on his YouTube channel as well, which is rare. Like, you don't see a lot of the big dudes doing that. And another important aspect to the past few months, I would say, is the wheel brand Kinesis was recently relaunched at Luff 6, which I think symbolizes how there is a real demand for a lot of the 90s heritage stuff, and the industry is in such a place that they're able to afford to bring back heritage brands like this, not necessarily knowing if they'll work out or not, and they know that there's a demand for this sort of thing. So I think it's cool to see that this is being brought back, and in the way that they're doing it as well. And I think that being said, modified cars are in a weird place, whereas I feel like it would have exploded so much more if it was easier to get parts and it was cheaper to buy cars. But I think the past few years have really showed the perseverance of the scene, because, hard times, and then people were still continuing to innovate and continuing to grow. And I think that a big part of that was the online presence, especially during the pandemic, of a lot of companies like Donut Media and Hoonigan, and individuals like Rob Dahm, TJ Hunt, Adam LZ. And I think it brought in a large amount of new fans to the scene.